Shalom mishpacha. Hi friends. Guess what a rabbi does while she is on vacation? She bakes and cooks the mother load for Shabbat. Normally, our Shabbats are a little bit more pressed for time because I am managing the demands of a congregation with the demands of running a household. But when I am on my vacation, I really enjoy digging into more recipes, more challah braiding techniques, and more ways to bring the beauty of Shabbat into my own home. And apart from challah making and baking, I'm also going to talk a little bit about the mitzvah of taking challah and saying the appropriate blessing. So I will be teaching you that as well. I'm going to showcase all these different kinds of delicious recipes, from challah braiding to babka making, and we're also going to be making my husband's amazing herb chicken recipe. We are going to be making a Moroccan carrot salad. We are going to be making roasted bell peppers, and we are going to be making hummus from scratch, and many other delights. So join me for my journey and cook along. Let's make my husband's yummy herb chicken. Start with apple cider vinegar. We are going to create the marinade. We're adding in some curcuma as well as some Trader Joe's spices, including this green goddess spice mix and the ajika spice mix. He will then add some water to create enough liquid to cover the entire chicken when we put it in the pan. Now he's going to add some fresh herbs like this sage, as well as thyme and leek. He is going to chop up the sage and thyme really finely, and then he's going to quarter the leek, wash it out so that there is no debris or sand in it anymore, and then he's going to slice that up as well and add it. Here he is chopping up his sage really fine and adding it to the mix. As you can see, that's how he has cut up his leek, and he's washed it. A little more thyme for that extra pop of flavor. And he has also added things like salt and pepper and a little garlic salt, but he tends to go moderately with the garlic salt because it's quite intense. Put the chicken in the pot and pour the marinade on top. And my husband is quite diligent at making sure that not too many of the solid parts of the vegetables are exposed above the waterline, so to say, because they tend to burn in the oven. So he's kind of pushing those aside and making sure that they stew in their own juices for that tender flavor. He's going to put the oven at 420 and put it on for about an hour and 15 minutes. And then he will broil the chicken at a lower temperature for 15 minutes or so. Alright friends, we are going to make some challah today. And I am going to make challah based on 2 kilos or a little over 4 pounds of flour. So this package actually has 2.26 kilos. It's about 5 pounds of flour. I don't need to use all of that, but it's always great to keep a little back in case I need a little more. Now, why am I going to make so much challah? First of all, it's really useful to have multiple loaves on hand. I batch bake and stick a bunch in the freezer. But also because I want to fulfill the halachic requirement of making the minimum amount of dough needed for me to fulfill the mitzvah of havrashat challah. Havrashat challah is the mitzvah of separating an egg or an olive-sized chunk from the challah and making the appropriate blessing over it. This is in reminiscence and in remembrance of the dough that used to be separated in temple times for the kohanim, for the priestly class to eat. And it elevates the status of bread, just being bread, to being sanctified bread, and it's a mitzvah on all Jewishly baked bread and other baked goods. In a commercial setting, the baker, the Jewish or the kosher bakery, will take the challah. In a domestic setting, the person making the challah can take the challah and make the appropriate blessing. Fun fact, it's that challah that's the actual challah, not the bread that we eat at the Shabbat table. The minimum halachic requirement of dough that I make, that I hold by, is 1600 grams, about 3 pounds, a little more than 3 pounds of flour. If I use 4 pounds of flour or 2000 grams or 2000 grams, 2 kilos of dough, I will be solidly within that halachic range. I'm going to use metric, not only because I'm a stubborn European, but also because it allows you the logic of baking according to the baker's measurements, which are always based on 1000 grams and work with ratios and proportions, which is really handy. You might have learned from my other video that I use about a 70% hydration points for my flour, and if you want to know all about hydration points, I will link the other video below. And that includes all wet ingredients, so that's my water, my eggs, and my oil. And if I would add honey, that would include honey too. So 70-30 to wet versus dry ingredients will have a dough that is pliant enough to braid, but also firm enough to hold its texture. If I push the hydration point up higher, it will become a very floppy dough, which is great for other types of bread, but not challah. On about 2000 grams or 2 kilos or a little over 4 pounds of flour, I use 4 eggs, and I'll keep 1 egg separate from the carton for the glaze. But what I'm going to incorporate into my dough is 4 eggs. I like an egg-rich challah. So let's get to work. Another important thing to know about metric is that in the case of water, and this does not apply to every type of liquid, but it does apply to water, which is kind of seen as the gold standard for this in terms of density and its properties, is that 1 gram of water equals 1 milliliter of water. They are the same, they are completely aligned. Here's a funny story, and I will try to link the article in the show notes of this episode, but challah in Europe traditionally was made savory, not sweet. And it wasn't until Jews came to America from Europe that challah became very sweet, partially under the influence of the sugar industry, and partially because it was seen as a luxury that you could incorporate and make this very light, sweet brioche type challah. Now, challah in Europe is also light, but it's not sweet. And so the challah I ate in Europe would be like white bread, but just really refined and beautiful and soft and fluffy and rich because of the added eggs, but would not be overly sweet. So I do add sugar, but only a few spoonfuls, and that's it. I do not add more sugar than that, and that makes for a healthier alternative in as far processed white flour is healthy, but let's just roll with it. So I'm first going to measure out 1000 grams of flour. I'm now going to put that in the mixing bowl. I'm going to measure out another 1000 grams. I'm going to add some salt, a couple of tablespoons. I just wing this. And I never mix my salt directly with my yeast because salt is the enemy of yeast. So I'm not going to add the yeast until a little later. I add my spoonfuls of sugar. That's enough, 4 teaspoons full. And then my water. So right now I have 700 grams of water, which won't be enough, but I'm going to eyeball it because I don't want to overshoot with my water. Letting it sit like this is actually good. It allows the dough to go into a process after about 20 minutes or so called electrolysis, which will make the gluten in the dough stretchier, more pliable, and will create a nicer and more consistent dough. My eggs. Now I'm going to add in some evu, I guess. Extra virgin olive oil. I grew up in the Mediterranean, so you know, nothing else is good enough as far as I'm concerned. And I'm just going to wing it. Why? Because for me, being experienced, I know what consistency my challah needs to be in order for the dough to be okay. Lowballing the amount of liquid I add, because I will eyeball the amount that I will add as the dough is coming together. Now I consider the salt adequately mixed. I get my yeast and I add about 3 tablespoons of yeast. My dough is still really dry, which I expected, so I just add a little more water and continue letting it knead. As you can see, the dough is coming together and it's starting to get that consistency of, well, I don't know how to describe this any better, but basically human flesh. If you touch a fleshy part of your body, like your hip or your breasts, if you have those, or your tummy, then it should kind of feel like that. And that is how you know it's done. So now I'm going to detach this, the dough hook, and transfer it into my kneading bowl and just let it rise. Unhook this. And out it comes. I coated my kneading bowl with a little bit of oil as well. I'm just punching it down, folding it in on itself, and then time and Mother Nature are going to do the rest. I like flipping it over so that the seam is at the bottom for a little bit of extra cohesion, and then I'm going to cover it with a tea towel and we're done. Let's make some homemade hummus. Making hummus is very easy. I used to do it years ago, so I'm going to do it again. All you need is a device like a Cuisinart mixer, and you need your chickpeas, garlic salt, tahini, which is sesame paste. I like a little bit of cumin in my hummus, and lemon juice. Last but not least, olive oil. And of course, if you've followed my vegan Shabbat, my vegan series where I kept a vegan for a month throughout the winter month of Shabbat, you all know that you can do amazing things with chickpea water, so I'm going to save this. You can use chickpea water as a vegan alternative to egg. So all I'm going to do is strain this off. So now I'm going to add my goodies. Chickpeas, a nice generous helping of tahini. And this stuff can be pretty hard to dig out because it tends to, like most nut butters and nut pastes, it tends to separate out from its oils and get clumpy inside. Again, how much? I don't use measurements. I'll do it to taste. I realize that that's not really helpful for a cooking or food prep YouTube video. But then again, I'm a rabbi, not a cook. Sorry guys. Now I'll throw in some garlic salt. Not too much because this stuff is quite intense. Some cumin. Really for that Middle Eastern flavor. Some olive oil. And some lemon juice because you do want that tangy flavor. I'll give this a first blast and then see how the flavors come together. It's still a little chunky. It can do with a little more. Let me show you the texture. But let's try tasting it. You can do with a tiny bit more salt. I think it's good on the tahini. A little bit more cumin. A splash of lemon juice to make it a bit more tangy. It's time to prepare my hummus. I'm going to make one za'atar themed and one smoked paprika themed. Then I will cover that up and store it in the fridge. And then season with my Lebanese za'atar, which is an oregano, sumac, sesame spice mix. If you want to see me do other creative things with za'atar, I would encourage you to look at the challah baking video that I made, because I made za'atar challah. I'm going to make roast bell peppers. This is very easy and very delicious. And I'm going to use a technique that I learned from It Up. I will link her YouTube channel down below. She is a Sephardi Orthodox doctor and mother who does amazing cooking. And she taught me this, which is to cook and sweat your bell peppers so that you can easily remove their skins. If you leave their skins on, they'll be tough. So how do you do that? You're going to cook them in here with a bit of olive oil. Bake them in the oven for about 20 minutes at about 400 degrees. And then, as they are cooling down, you're going to put them in some containers with a cover and seal them up with the cover. This allows them to sweat, and after they've cooled down for about 5 to 10 minutes, you can much easier remove the skin. I'm not going to cut them in full strips. I'm just going to create halves, bake them so that I have the largest possible surface area, which makes it easiest to pull off the skin. Then I'm going to cut them into slivers and season them. I'm just going to remove the seeds, and it is ready to go. Expecting it to steam a little. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So what my husband will do after he gets home, he will brown this and then it will be good for serving. Beautiful. I'm going to start braiding that up pretty soon. My life-saving tools are this and this. Very affordable, very useful. This is a dough cutter. It also allows you to flip and lift the dough. And this is a French rolling pin, which, because of its tapered edges, you are able to control your flattening much better than with a regular rolling pin. And so that works really great as well. And it covers a lot of length. First thing we actually have to do is the mitzvah of taking challah, the hafrish challah. And as I mentioned before, this is a remnant of the time where we used to separate baked goods out for the priests in the temple. And so we do it zecher lebeit mikdash, right, in memory of the temple, and to sanctify our bread from just being bread to being sanctified Jewish bread, so to say. And it's very simple. You have to do it on a minimum amount of dough, and I have met that minimum requirement. It's a very simple but also a lovely mitzvah because it ties you to Jewish bakers all across time and all across geography. And it's just a really sweet reminder that the Jewish mission is to sanctify the world, and through our sanctification of the world, we bring meaning and glory to the world and glory to the Creator, and we help bring light and healing and repair to the world as well. And it just makes me more conscious of the gift and blessing of bread, in particular the sustenance in general. Some people have the custom of praying for themselves, their families, or other people, or the world. Some people even take names from loved ones or through social media and will keep those names in mind as they take challah. All you need to do is make the blessing and tear off like a small egg's worth, or a kazait, which means the size of an olive, but I think ancient olives were bigger, or the halachic standard of olive is quite a bit bigger than what we think of as an olive nowadays. So more like a small egg worth of challah. Here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehafrish challah min ha'isa. Praised are you, eternal our God, sovereign of the universe, who has sanctified us with the commandment of taking challah. Now this is actually the challah. We tend to call this the challah, of course, because it's what we eat, it's the bread. But this, strictly speaking, is now the challah. So I'm going to set that aside on my baking sheet and bake it. In the olden days where people had fire-based ovens, they would burn it in the oven. I would not recommend doing that today. So I will usually wrap it up in the parchment paper once I'm done baking with it, and then discard it respectfully. I'm going to save some for the kids so they can make babka. So I'll put that back. Meanwhile, I might make some babka of my own. So I'll set this aside, and then I'll turn this into 2 nice big loaves of challah. I'm going to do a new kind of braiding, which is basically a 4-style braid that I've done before, but I saw Challah Prince do this on Instagram the other day. He doubled up by making 8 braids, and you still braid them as you would the 4 braids, but you double them up and it gives a super cool effect. So I will need to divide this dough into 8 equal parts. Some people will actually measure it out and weigh it out. I don't do that. I kind of eyeball it, but I go half into half into half for the best result. Remember what I explained in the previous video. I conceive of this as being a person with 2 arms and 2 legs. We're going to cross the arms, open the legs, and bring the arms down to the middle. Cross the arms, open the legs, and bring 1 set of arms down the middle. Then this becomes the new set of arms. Cross the arms, open the legs, bring a new arm down the middle. Create a new arm. Cross the arms, open the legs, bring a new set of arms down the middle. Make a new set of arms. Cross the arms, open the leg, bring this arm down the middle. that. Isn't that pretty? Let me show you the result. I'm going to put it on my baking tray to let it rise. I'm actually going to teach myself how to make a 5 braided challah. I've tried a couple of times and not been very successful, and I have the time now to try it again. So the channel that I'm using is by Challah at your girl. That's her name, Challah at your girl. It's a pun, Challah at your girl. And she has this great tutorial called The Various Ways of Traditional 5-Strand Challah. So I'm going to try that. Make some babka. Main trick is to make it as flat as you can. The flatter, the more rolls you'll be able to put in it, and the more evenly distributed the filling will be. Could use an enriched dough, a dairy-based dough with milk and butter, and that would give a wonderful effect. But if you want maximum efficiency, because you don't want to keep on making different batches of dough, then challah dough will do just fine. This is where the French rolling pin comes in handy, because you can angle the tapered side and really flatten the edges, which would be much harder with a regular rolling pin. Now I'm going to do something experimental with my babka. My children are already making chocolate babka, so I don't want more chocolate babka. So I'm going to make a European style babka with almond paste and fill it with this blackcurrant jam. I think blackcurrant jam and almond paste will go very nicely. And all I basically need to do is make the paste, which is equal parts powdered sugar and blanched almond. And I'm going to add some egg white and the almond extract. In this case, I'm going to use a cup because of the 1-to-1 ratio between the blanched almonds and the powdered sugar. The yolk I'm going to keep for glazing my challah. I'm going to add my egg white here. I found a recipe through the Spruce Eats on how to do this. It calls for 1.5 cups of each. I'm going to go a little more low key and start with 1 cup and see how that goes. Add my almonds. Now I'm going to include a dash of almond extract and mix it up. This is also my go-to recipe for almond cookies, great for Pesach. It's basically the same recipe, and then you form them into cookies and bake them for about 10 to 13 minutes at 350. Added a little bit of water. Let's see how this goes. Remember, friends, this is a total experiment. I have no idea how this will turn out. I picked this up in an Eastern European store, and it's really lovely. A little chunky, so picky eaters, aka children, might not approve, but that's too bad. I'm always looking for the possibility of rolling the most for the greatest marble effect. So I'm going to roll this side because this is the long side and that allows me to get the maximum amount of rolls. If you do it the short side, you'll have less rolls. Now I can do any number of a few things. I can cut it down the middle, wrap them around each other for a classic babka, or I can just roll it up as is. And I'm going to do that because I think it might caramelize too much, and that way I can keep the dough covering the filling and it will stay nice and gooey on the inside. My hack for making babka is this silicone pan. So now I'm just going to roll it up like a round challah, essentially. And these are my beautiful loaves. They've proved, and now I'm going to brush them with my egg mix. I added just a little bit of water so I can go a little further. I'm very proud that I finally managed to pull off the 5-strand challah. Now these are ready to go into the oven. Now I'm going to let my babka proof a little bit and add it to the oven. Alright friends, I am going to make a very quick Moroccan style carrot and raisin salad. And for my spices I'll be using a little bit of lemon juice, olive oil, ground turmeric, cumin, garam masala. All this entails is peeling the carrots, grating them, mixing them in with all these elements and putting in some raisins. And that's it, and it makes for a very refreshing, flavorful salad. I might add in a little bit of honey as well, just for a sweet touch. Now it peels off like this. Just perfect. And that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this mega video with so much content for you to try at home. And if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Shalom uvracha, with peace and blessings from my bite to your bite. Bye.